Okay, so during this webinar, we will first have presentations from a lovely set of panelists that will be followed by a Q&A session. So again, for those who just arrived, please fill in the poll that you will see in the chat um, so that it will help for the Q&A session. Um, for our first guest, we will have Jordi Oliva from Good Karma Project. Jordi is an ocean advocate who was born close to the Mediterranean Sea. He's also an industrial engineer with an MBA, and he co-founded the non-profit Good Karma Project, who's developing citizen science and educational programs. The organization is now well known for leading on the pellet pollution monitoring throughout the Western Mediterranean. The next speaker will be Sarah Marshall from Planet Aware. So Sarah is the chair of the Planet Aware community group. She helped to set up the original Planet Aware CIC 6 years ago, and the group in its current form has been running for 2 years now. So Sarah has a strong interest in marine plastic pollution and is a keen snorkeler, which is kind of amazing. She is also an environmental advocate, having volunteered for other charities such as MCS and Hampshire and I Love White Wildlife Trust. And she's also qualified beach schools leader and currently tutor children with dyslexia. And our passion for working with young people has helped bring about change. Cannot wait to hear from you as well. And the next speaker will be Heidi Tate. So she's the CEO and founder of Tangaroa Blue. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. And she will be talking about plastic pellet pollution in Australia and her work surrounding it. Later on for the Q&A session, we'll be joined by Heather. So you might already know Heather McFarlane from Fidra. She's been working for science and environmental NGOs for over 15 years and now works at Fidra, which is a non-environmental charity working with civil society, governments, and industry to deliver solutions to chemical and plastic pollutions. And they're kind enough to host a series on webinar on plastic pollution, plastic pellet pollution. And happy to speak about that now. I've also not introduced myself, but I'm Lucie Padovani from Surfrider Europe, based in Brussels. I'm working on EU policies and specifically on all related to marine litter. And for the last 3 years, I've been working on plastic pellet pollution regulation in the EU. So I can already start with my presentation to introduce a bit the subject of this webinar, which is chronic losses of plastic pellets and how should we respond to them. So I will start sharing my screen now so that you can see my presentation, hopefully without any issue. Okay, can you see it full screen? No. Okay. Yes, so as I said, I'm Lucie Padovani from Surfrider Europe. So we're a community of ocean lovers, and we're grassroots organizations with volunteers all across Europe who wants to protect the ocean. And in order to do so, we've had a program on marine litter for since our creation, really. And because we work on plastic pollution, we decided to get to the root of plastic pollution, and the root of it is plastic pellets. So as you can see, just a brief introduction to the subject for those who are not familiar yet. So plastic pellets are also called nurdles. They can be in the form of those little granules that you see on the screen, but also in the form of powders and flakes. And they are the raw material used to make all plastic items. As you can see, I've put a few just so you know, so bottles, balloons, whatever, but it's really all of them. And as it is industrial material, it is only handled by industries. Um, as you can see, we also have some figures. So plastic, sorry. So we have 15% of the global plastic production that is happening in Europe. We have and we have over 180,000 tons of plastic pellets that are lost each year in the EU. As you can see, plastic pellets is strongly linked to plastic production as it's the raw material used to make plastic. So as this number is expected to grow in Europe, we expect also to see the amount of pollution to grow if we do not take action now. And plastic pellets are a form of microplastic pollution that we found in the ocean as well. So how do they enter the environment? So last webinar was about acute spills, which is about one-off incidents that can happen all across the supply chain of plastic production. But now we're talking about chronic losses. And so chronic losses are ongoing incidents that happen during routine operations. So they can result to many different factors, but the most important thing to remember is that it's because of a lack of preventive measures to avoid this pollution. So as you can see, just to give you a quick overview of the supply chain, so it's a very generalistic drawing without all of the specific actors, but just so you know, so during production you can have losses, transformation, whenever plastic pellets are being handled and being put into packaging, we have risks of losses. And then during, of course, transport, which is one of the most famous, I would say, cause of plastic pollution, plastic pellet pollution, and also around recycling facilities. So whenever they're being handled, transported, put somewhere or another, you have risks of losses and of chronic losses. I've just put an illustration of one of the cases I've been following for 3 years now. So happening in Belgium, the pollution has actually been ongoing for 15 years and maybe even more than that, actually. And we have a direct link with the industries that are around the sites and the transport. We can see that the losses are chronic and that whenever there are heavier weather, heavier storm or rain, you have an increase in the pollution that happens around the sites. So the impacts of plastic pellet pollution are numerous on the environment. So it's a pollution that is quite difficult to remove from the environment once it is spilled. So it's long lasting, it degrades the habitats, but it also have an ecotoxicological impacts on ecosystems, as plastic pellets are also carrying chemicals and additives that have an impact on the environment if ingested also by the wildlife. They can also enter the food chain and pose a potential threat for us as well. And of course, it has an impact on the coastal communities, and you might hear a bit more about that from the speakers after me. So we can see with our set of panelists that we have a lot of responses to spills from civil society. So either from awareness raising, but also just reporting pollution where we're seeing it, as the industries are not always transparent when pollution happens. So this issue is brought to the press, communicated on social media, and then of course we're involved as civil society in many legislative processes. So either at more local level or in a more regional, European, international level, as many things can be done to prevent this pollution. And as all of my presentation on plastic pellet pollution, I finish with those words that the key with this type of pollution is prevention, and we need binding regulation to prevent this pollution. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will get to them later on. And I will now be followed by the presentation from Georgie from Good Karma Projects.
Yep. Thank you, Lucy. Can you hear me well? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So, I introduce myself. I'm Jordi Oliva from Good Karma Project. I'm the co-founder and project director for Pellet, which is the project that I'm going to introducing towards. So, for those who doesn't have met us before, Good Karma Projects was founded in 2017 from our passion for the ocean, especially for the wave, passion for surfing. And the two pilots of the organization is the education and the action for the planet, understanding action as the citizen science that we're running. So to put in some context for those who don't know about Tarragona, in Tarragona we're living right next to the largest petrochemical complex in Southern Europe, where more than 2 million tons of pellets are being manufactured every year. So we got a significant amount of this pollution in our local beaches and surroundings, but especially in Platja de la Pineda, which we've been detecting massive spills during the last years. We detected the biggest one back in 2018 when we started like monitoring and following the dynamics of this kind of pollution. So, as Lucy has just explained, the pellet spills are spilled at every stage of the process. So, as we live close by these industrial areas, the pellets are easily found around the production and transportation areas. So, what made us how we made the difference among, let's say, other activism was about to let's say monitor and technify it and have a proper scientific methodology to understand the dynamics of the pollution and so on. So the main concern of the case in Tarragona was not about this local beach. It was about the prevailing winds that are pushing this pellet concentration on the surface. You're seeing the industrial area and the outputs of how the pellets are arriving through the main river, which is the Rio Francolí or other streams. So we are getting this pellet accumulation area with super specific conditions. So the rest of the time, let's say the prevailing winds blow into the 300-degree direction, which is basically where the Balearic Islands are placed. And we found, as we started collaborating with other NGOs from the Balearic Islands, that there are also happening massive arrivals of this, well, of course, other microplastic, but with a significant presence of these pellets in the northern Balearics and in the northern part of the Menorca, which is a natural biosphere reserve. So that's why we started collaborating with several NGOs to raise awareness, to visualize this invisible problem to the eyes of the administration and the companies. So we launched the Met Pellets project. Met Pellets project was about quantifying and understanding the dynamics of the pollution in the Western Mediterranean, with special focus in the Tarragona case. We ran during this project several citizen science events with the biggest northern hunt registered in Platja de la Pineda, with almost 2 million of these plastic pellets, with the density of these more than 20,000 pellets per square meter. So the purpose of this kind of event was not about cleaning up the beach, but to raise awareness and to visualize the problematic. So how we run, let's say on time, we started with this investigation and reporting based on this Pellets project, working together with other NGOs for the Citizen Science Program and the University of Barcelona for the scientific methodology that we've been following. Then, with all this information, we reached the different stakeholders in the region. We went for the administration. We knocked the doors of all the companies, asking about what they would have been doing, what they would do about it. So we worked hard to earn the attention and respect of the administration and try to open a dialogue. But we weren't much of us. There wasn't much of outcome about it. So we started with going for a bigger communication campaigns together with Surrider Foundation Europe, where we showed a documentary connecting this industrial area to other um, marine protected areas, which are being affected under these pellet pollution issues. And last year, we we ended up launching this administrative procedure, which is an environmental liability requirement that was addressed to 7 companies, but the administration has recently extended it to 13 companies, which are now under investigation because well, as you know, we were lacking of a regulatory framework, so it was pretty difficult to demonstrate, let's say, the impact, even though it's pretty clear, easy and clear to understand the source. It's super difficult to get to point them and have like all this backup of data to address to these certain companies. So on our side, yeah, I would say that the lessons learned, it's been that well, to take into account that the credibility is hard to earn and easy to lose. So we've been going through this facts and evidence always with the data, being constructive, sharing all the data with the administration, and even at the beginning at the companies when they're not, let's say, being that open with the companies because we weren't seeing any results. Then it's been always thing going for the long-term vision. We had a strategy and thinking about going down the road with no shortcuts to success. We've always planned way ahead of what we were seeing on the short term, but that's made a difference on the communication strategy, but also with the actions. We've been open and taking into account the interests of different stakeholders. We're living in a super touristic area, so we didn't want to harm, let's say, the local population, which works during a high season. They don't want to harm that much the image of the area during this high season. We've involved the local community, of course, with the citizen science action, and collaboration has been key for success. We've reached the European Parliament thanks to Surveillance Foundation Europe, for example, and we've collaborated with the Citizen Science project with the Balearic Islands NGOs that have been key for gathering all this data. And to be improved, I would share that we would have need to be more oriented or focused on the project funding and resources, since we've been relying on volunteering hours from the core team and the rest of volunteers. And for this long-term vision, I would say, and since these projects tend to go farther on time, we would have need to pay more attention on this funding and resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordi, for the presentation. Always good to hear from all the amazing work that you've done. So now that we've heard from citizen science, data gathering, but also litigation, we'd like to hear from our next speaker. So, our next speaker is Sarah, who is going to present the work that she's done with Planet Aware. Yeah, to you, Sarah.
Hello. Let me just try and find my screen. Is that okay? Can everyone
Yes.
hear? Yes, okay. So hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm chair of a community organisation called Planet Aware on the Isle of Wight, which is an island just off the south of the UK. Sort of Portsmouth is opposite us. And we are a community group. So we have a core committee of about 6, 7 people. So we all volunteer. And that can be quite challenging at times because we're trying to fit in everything with life. But I think we've done okay so far this year. So we take youth groups down to the beach. We go into schools. We do beach cleans. We've got a project on cigarette butts, and we are sort of interested in the shipping waste at the moment because we get quite a lot of shipping waste on our shores. But obviously, also we get nurdles. And I was looking back, and I think I've been doing nurdle hunts for at least 6 years. But maybe only when it was the Great Nurdle Hunt. And then I think once you see them, it's really hard to unsee them. So more and more we were noticing nurdles on our shores. And so, yes, so I was looking back. So October, there was sort of light splatterings. And then I don't know whether it was we were becoming more aware and looking more, but certainly last year was one of the worst years. And I think it was particularly stormy at times. And so, particularly in the south of the island, we had, as you can see in the picture, that sort of level of pollution along the strand lines. But also, we found them in places that we didn't necessarily used to see them. And I think at that point, we could literally get a dustpan and brush and start sweeping them up. And obviously, the island is a tourist destination as well. And so I guess there is always a balance in trying to bring this to people's attention. Same with marine pollution, um, and how this affects, like you say, the image of the beaches, but also at the same time trying to engage people and say, look, we need to look after our beaches, and it isn't just about our beaches; it's about a wider issue. And so we started to do more nurdle hunts, and basically we ended up having a gathering of local councillors. We invited people from the Crown Estates. So we were lucky that representatives were interested to come from there. And then Oracle environmental consultants were really supportive, and they came and did a presentation for us, which I guess for a small community group, having someone else come in that are environmental consultants, environmental experts in a way, helped. We had representatives from National Trust, and our MP also came. And then we had a sort of meeting and presentation about what we found, and then we went down to the beach. And I think that was, for lots of people, quite shocking because you can walk along that beach and not actually notice the kind of levels of nurdles that were there last year. And I think people, whatever their political persuasion or views, were actually quite shocked that the nurdles were there. And it was a good opportunity for Oracle to demonstrate the kinds of cleaning up equipment should we have a bigger spill or anything like that. Because, as you all know, there's no kind of real mandate or sort of legislation that says how things will proceed if there are big spills. And the local press, we managed to get in all the local press and on radio. And our MP Bob Seeley did put an interview up on his social media and YouTube and on his sort of government pages, which was great as well. And I think what we found was hard was getting it out. I don't know whether it's because we're an island or whether it's because we as a sort of community group need to learn a bit more about working and finding out more working with the press. But we found trying to get people from sort of beyond the island quite difficult to be interested in the event and to be interested in on what we were finding on our shores. But I think that might be a slight learning process for us. And so then our MP did ask questions in government, which I think we were really pleased about because it was because we were all volunteering, it took quite a lot of time and effort to get everything together. So to actually for him to then go on and ask questions in Parliament was great. So I think that was encouraging for us that actually, even though we are a small community group, that we can start to think about, I know, prompting people to think about sort of plastic pollution beyond the island. And then we have sent Nurdles off for testing. Soccer and Oracle collected some of our Nurdles, but I think it's still at a point where they need to do more work to see what the background levels of pollutants were and actually what were in the Nurdles themselves. So, for example, on the Isle of Wight, the Nurdles had high levels of fire retardants, but we don't know whether that was because they've absorbed them from the environment or whether that was to a certain level of what was already in them. And so what's next for us as a community group? It'd be great to have more members, to have more time. So I think we're going to carry on working on that. I think we need to, I think I said this last time, we need to get better at recording in different ways the number of Nurdles that we find, noting weather conditions and anything else that might have affected the numbers of Nurdles we're finding on the beach. I think it was interesting that people were very enthusiastic at the time at the event, but then that sort of seems other things come up and people sort of forget. So I think we need to work out how we can carry on bringing this issue up to keep it in people's minds. We've got an election coming up, so we want to engage with the new MPs, and we're thinking maybe giving another public talks, but inviting members of the public as well this time, later this year. We have thought about, we support the Great Nurdle Hunt, so we're thinking about how we can engage the public, the general community more, and whether we can have collection points and people can go off and bring them, but there's some sort of issues around that we just need to check. And because we're an island where there isn't any great industry, it's kind of, you want to do more, but the factories are on the mainland, and obviously some of these pellets are coming probably from Nurdle spills, and other, well, who knows, all parts of the world. But we're wondering whether we can look to see if we can do anything with the factories that are nearer to us, but that's going to require more time and effort. And then I think just carry on supporting Fidra, Flora Fauna, any petitions, doing what we can, and just engaging with other people like yourselves. And if there are any ideas what else we can do. Again, like I say, we rely on tourism, and so keeping our beaches clean is really important. So it should be high on the agenda. But I think sometimes there is, because some of the more visited beaches tend to be cleaner, that people forget about the less accessible beaches. And then with Nurdles, of course, they're such small they are such small bits of pollution people don't realise, and once they pointed it out to them, you almost feel bad because you can't unsee it. So I hope that helps. And if you are a small community trying to do your best, I think just keep trying and just keep learning, and just make the difference that you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was also a great inspiration, I think, for all of us to see all that you've managed to accomplish as a volunteering organization. It's quite amazing, and good luck for what's next. So our next speaker now will be Heidi Tate. So I'll give you the floor, and please let's be mindful of the time so we have enough time also for questions. Thank you, Heidi.
No problems. I will try and be efficient. So thanks for the opportunity. So I guess one of the unique ways that we've been dealing with plastic resin pellets pollution in Australia is we bought Operation Clean Sweep to Australia, and it's the only place in the world where the industry program, Operation Clean Sweep, has been adopted by or hosted by an NGO in addition to the plastics industry. So in Australia, it's a collaboration between Chemistry Australia and our organisation, the NGO Tangaroa Blue Foundation. And I just wanted to share some of our journey of how we've tried to influence the industry to stop the pollution at the source. Just let me know if you can't see my slides. Um, okay, so first
We
of all,
just, Heidi, we can see your slide, but not full screen. If you want to put presentation mode, just bottom right.
no problems. How's that?
Amazing, thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So there we go. First of all, in Australia in 2015, we know Operation Clean Sweep has very mixed reviews internationally, but it was developed by the US in 1992. And although there was a very big focus on plastic resin pellets, aka nurdles, in the past, we've really started to shift that focus to all types of microplastic feedstock. So now we're looking at flake, powder, recyclate, resin pellets, and swarf, which is the residue from the rotomolders when they grout out certain products. In Australia, we have now more than 100 businesses that have taken the pledge, and this includes all parts of the supply chain and the value chain, from suppliers, transporters, manufacturers, and recyclers. And we also have 5 industry associations that have signed up and taken the pledge too, which means they're navigating this through their members as well on our behalf. There we go. So one of the tools we use is this rating tool, and it's so we don't have to necessarily start off by counting every single nurdle or pellet that we find. And we use this predominantly when we walk around factories to see whether there's pollution. So we know that when there's manufacturing going on, there will always be a spill, and we don't have a problem with the spill. What we haven't, our problem is when the spill leaks out of the premises onto public land and into our stormwater systems, and that's when it becomes pollution. So we use this rating tool. It's very quick. You can just walk around and you just observe, because you know that if you get down on your hands and knees and pick and count stuff, that, you know, somebody will come and ask you questions, and sometimes that creates a bit of a conflict situation. So this is the tool that we use. 1 means we can't see anything, and 5 means that there is a gazillion pellets or pieces of feedstock and everything in between. So when we go to the sites, we record this rating tool, and we use this to show whether a factory consistently is losing feedstock into the environment, or maybe it was a one-off spill, and it helps us then collect that evidence that some of the other speakers has been talking about, which is so critical. So when we have been doing this this collection of evidence, we've picked a number of factories which consistently have a rating of 4 or 5. And we worked with the local government to install some of these traps in the stormwater traps that are directly in front of the premises or the factory. So this isn't on the private land, this is on the public land. And so it's the responsibility of the local government. So working with them, we've been able to show why it's so important to install some of these traps, and we have some government grants to do that. And then we were able to really quantify how much the trickle effect is equating to. So every 8 weeks, we would empty the traps and then we would audit very specifically the number of plastic items that we were finding and microplastics. And so this gives you an example of me sitting there going cross-eyed, pulling out microplastics from this particular trap. And this is the kind of evidence that we were able to collect. So this particular trap had actually only been in place for 3.5 weeks, but we already captured more than 12,500 pieces of microplastic that were related to the business that was directly in front of the trap. So that included almost 10,000 plastic resin pellets and additive pellets, 112 polystyrene balls, some film remnants, and then over 2,000 other hard plastic remnants. So this evidence we started providing to the EPA in Australia, and that this particular case, it was with the Victorian EPA. And we kept sending these reports to the EPA. And they kept telling us that they had visited the business, but they hadn't really seen the issue. So we were able to create a meeting together with the head of the EPA compliance officers and showcase this evidence to them and ask them to meet us on site when we were servicing one of these traps so they could see what we could see and we could see what they could see and we would all get on the same page. And this just very recently happened. And here are the guys that are servicing the traps in the orange high-vis vest, and the guys in the yellow are the EPA, the Victorian government EPA officers, and also the lady there on the left is the local government authority as well. So we were able to pull the traps out and to show exactly what we were seeing, and it has now responded in some further compliance responses with these companies. So they just weren't seeing the microplastics because it's not a huge, big pile of rubbish. So this has been a very important relationship in collecting the evidence and engaging the EPA. The EPA has also issued guidance on handling feedstock loss. And so this is their engagement with the industry to say we can now respond from a compliance response because we've issued these guidances. And they're actually updating this as we speak. So it's not going to just talk about nurdles and plastic resin pellets. It's going to cover all of those plastic feedstock items. And I guess in Victoria, there's been a massive shift in the legislation just over the last couple of years where they're now talking about general environmental duty. And so every business having to have being responsible as much as is practicable to ensure that they don't cause harm to human health or the environment. And this is everybody's general environmental duty, no matter what business that they operate under. And the general environmental duty is based on what the current state of knowledge is within an industry. So that basically means if everybody knows that you have to put stormwater traps in and, bunding around your walls and clean up spills every day, if everybody in the industry knows that that should be done and you're operating below that, then you're not meeting your general environmental duty because you're operating below the state of knowledge. So this basically means that an EPA officer can turn up to your site and say, what measures have you put in place to prevent feedstock loss and pollution? And if you can't show them that you've done all of these things that everybody else is doing, the EPA can actually fine the business now, regardless of whether there's been a pollution incident or not. So it's a massive shift from fining after the event to fining because you haven't put those preventative measures in. And I think it's actually quite groundbreaking and probably one of the only places in the world where the shift has occurred from the Environmental Protection Authority. And this is just an example of what can occur from the response from one of our sites that we were rating 5 for a really long time. In addition to that, another one of our state governments, the New South Wales, has also endorsed Operation Clean Sweep in Australia, and they are funding it for 2 years to engage the industry on that. And they've also issued a guidance and legislation on how feedstock should be handled and what are the consequences from spills and pollution. So having the government providing them with that evidence is so critical, but then integrating it wherever it can possibly be into legislation, and therefore then compliance responses is the next step that has to happen. And I just want to also mention that the industry associations have been critical in this as well. So we have got now 5 of those industry associations that have taken the pledge for Operation Clean Sweep, and they now have targets in place for all of their members to sign up, and they're being very proactive in talking with their industry members, which kind of takes some of the pressure off us because they already have those relationships with the businesses. And so we're being invited, and this was literally last week by the Association of Roto Molders in Australasia, where we were invited to their annual big conference to present on Operation Clean Sweep, and why it's important and how the legislation is being pointing at that. And literally, we've had 5 new signatories sign up. One of them actually signed up before I'd even gotten off the stage, which is just amazing. But again, the industry is adopting this as best practice and really helping to promote it throughout their membership as well. So a big, again, that engagement is critical. It can't just all be left up to the NGOs and the conservation organisation and the citizens and the volunteers. We have to have these other players in place if we're going to really shift what the industry is doing on a day-to-day basis. And I just wanted to finish off with a bit of a weird thing that I just discovered in the last probably month is this is this really confusing I guess picture where some of these items we were thinking were pre-production pellets, which have actually turned out to be water treatment bio beads. And you can see the ones on the bottom that there's a little bit of a squished and they're irregular shaped, and that's to allow the algae to form on there to help with the filtration of water systems in things like fish tanks and so forth. So I just thought I'd flag that there is a paper that's listed there out there with some photos, and it'd be interesting and also critical to make sure that when we're providing that evidence that we're actually making sure that some of these other microplastic items aren't being confused for pellets and nurdles. And yeah, this is something I just learnt myself in literally the last couple of weeks. So I'll wrap it up there. Happy to talk to anybody if they'd like any of the resources or advice, and happy to answer questions later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heidi. That's an amazing presentation, also incredibly inspiring. Congrats on all of that you've done. And just so you know, we at Surfrider are working on the biobeads issue from wastewater treatment plants, and we actually are going to have a regulation that will put preventive measures for the urban wastewater treatment plants to avoid pollution from those. So great to see that you're also interested in the issue. I see we have some questions for you in the chat, but maybe also as Heather just joined the panel, we can go to ask a question to her and then go back to the questions to you. So I see you're also responding in the chat, Heather, but I was wondering if you could share with us how can volunteers and organizations help to call for an end for chronic pellet pollution?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, as we've already seen, there's lots of different ways that volunteers can call for an end from pellet pollution, and I think it's about finding what works for you in your area, in the time that you've got, in the organizations and the people that you're working with. So there isn't one way to do this. I think it can be from going out to doing a nurdle hunt is a great first step, but as we've seen, it's you can expand on that. So the nurdle hunt can be collecting data, taking a photo, or it can be an event where you get anyone from the local community involved and build up that core of support like we've seen, or you could do things like getting your local politicians involved or the local industry involved. So I think it depends of where you are, maybe what industry you've got around you, what the local government is like in your area, what the local community is like in your area. So there isn't one answer to this. I think this is very much depends on where you feel you can best make a contribution. But I'm really confident there's something that everybody can do. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, then there are resources on our information hub. So lots of these organisations that are here today have shared with us their case studies, they've shared with us presentations, they've shared with us briefings. And so if you need a bit of inspiration about what resources you could produce, for example, if you're interested in going and making either a presentation or a briefing or anything like that, then do have a look at our information hub. And one of my colleagues will put the link in the chat so that you can explore what other people have done. We've also got things on there like pictures and infographics that you can download. So if you are preparing, say, a report that you want to go to your local council or anything like that, you can use these images. They're freely available. Many of them have been donated by these organisations and NGOs that are here today. For you to help bring that message alive and to explain it. So please do use that information in your engagement work, in your advocacy, and use it and adapt it and share how you're getting on with us all as well. These webinars and these discussions are really, really helpful for us getting ideas of what to do in our area as well too. So yeah, I think there isn't one answer to that question. There's trying to figure out where you fit in and how you can best help.
Thanks a lot, Heather, for a lot of that. And thank you for the great hub that you created. That is incredibly helpful for all of us, I think. So just a first question for Heidi, maybe, from Danny. So how did you initially begin your engagement with industry? Was it solely through the Plastics Association? And what would you recommend other NGOs do who are interested in attempting to reach out to the industry?
It's a really good question, and it was really difficult, and I spent a lot of time banging my head against a brick wall to start off with. So, but I think that the thing is that when I finally managed to get a meeting with the sustainability officer from the Australian plastics industry, and this took months. I think he was envisaging that this woman was going to turn up with dreadlocks and and this ban plastic t-shirt on and just that's what he was preparing for. And literally I turned up in a suit and I talked about occupational health and safety. And I talked about loss of revenue from feedstock that was being bought by companies that wasn't getting used because it was being lost. And he was automatically intrigued by this conversation. And from there, we were able to develop a common ground to talk with. My driver is conservation. Okay, but not everybody can make a decision based on a conservation outcome. So you need to find what the thing is that they can actually make a decision on. And for him, it was about occupational health and safety and bottom line. And if I could get him on this journey of where I wanted to go with coming from a different avenue, who cares? As long as we get there in the end. And we've been working together now for 10 years. And we've been able to establish trust and we've been able to have some pretty difficult conversations because we have that trust. So step by step, but find that common ground first.
Thanks a lot, Heidi, for this. There was another question for you, and I mean, two others for you. Maybe you want to answer one of them in the chat, but maybe the first one. It was from Claudia from Plastic Change. So was the facility that you surveyed with the trap part of the OCS program or not? And did they know that you surveyed their loss, or what was your collaboration with the facility?
So no, they weren't part of Operation Clean Sweep, and they were a serial offender. For more than 8 years, we've had a trap in front of their factory, and we've been reporting to the EPA and local council, and they were what we called a serial offender. They knew that they were being watched because we do site audits on the public land. We'd tried to contact them so many times. That's one of the banging my head against a brick wall scenarios. And so we felt that they had received every single opportunity to address the pollution and they hadn't. And that's why we had no problems in working with local council, the local government, and the state EPA to throw them under the bus and say these guys are the first on the list that something has to happen for because they're not improving and they've had every single opportunity to do so.
Thanks a lot, Heidi, for this. If you want to answer in the chat, I don't know if you have access. There was a question from my colleague Christina. Also, I see there is a question, well, for me, on the impact of the Beware of Plastic Fake House campaign. So it was a campaign that we ran to debunk some preconceived idea on the Operation Clean Sweep as well, and how is being operated for now in the EU, and where we see some fails and gaps. And it was actually a great help to reach out to decision makers, although I have to say they needed first a lot of pedagogy to explain the issue and really what is at stake. But then later on, it was a great tool when we got to a bit of a more technical discussion, I would say, on what we would like to see in a regulation and what measures should be actually binding and not just voluntary. It was, yes, a great help, and also showing examples of pollution all across Europe was also a great help for us. And then might be able to move on for a question for all of us. So maybe I'll give the floor to Jordi. Do you have one piece of advice you'd recommend for an NGO who has managed to identify the pellet pollution in the area from chronic mismanagement?
So, well, I really like what Heidi just shared about how to approach them in a technical in the same language and to create a common ground. I would refer almost on the same way, since activism or environmental activism, it's been pointed from these kind of industries, kind of this dreadlocks image. And being professional, being serious, being professional, not trying to get those shortcuts, as I said, not trying to give a message out to give an alarm rather than being constructive. So on our side, what we've been doing is it's gathering data in a scientific way. We've been signing, let's say, all the reports as well, since in the NGO we are most of us have a technical background, so we've been trying to do all that reports in the most let's say official or technical way. So then it's the other piece of advice would be to plan ahead of time, not trying to do a one shot action. Try to keep to warm up with the, let's say, with the if the dialogue doesn't work, to work on a communication. We well together with Lucy and the Survivor team, we've been doing quite epic communication campaigns. We've been even doing documentaries sailing across the Mediterranean, but that was part of a plan ahead of time. Like you need to find the right moment for doing the right things. So just not to give them the time for cooling it down. From what we've seen, like the industry plays with time. Like when an accident happens, and if they just keep the low profile, nothing happens, nothing bad happens for them. So we focus on keep the topic like warm let's say, and split all the information. But well, I explained this several times, but it's kind of our level of knowledge. It's right here. What we tell the industries that we know, it's right here, and what we tell the media, it's right below that. So we have this gap to be used, let's say, to put on pressure on the industries or the administration to move on.
Thanks a lot, Jordi, for this answer. I see Sarah also responded in the chat. So yes, to create a list of people you want to get support from, and yeah, bring people together and good data. I think that's what we can gather from all of our speeches, is that we need good data to be credible when we bring it, whether we bring it to the industries or to the decision makers, so that we can actually create change and prevent this pollution, as we are all aiming to in our own way. So thanks a lot for all of this. I don't know if we have a last minute question, or maybe we can wrap up this webinar if it's all good also for the Fidra team. Okay, so thanks you everyone. Please remember that you can find this webinar online quite soon, and please remember also to visit the hub from the Nerdle Hunt that was created. That is incredibly helpful and gathers data, as we talked about, but also pictures, images from plastic pellet pollution. So it's also a great help for all of us in our work. And yeah, thank you, everyone.